Good evening. I'm Rachel Maddow in for Keith Olbermann. This is Monday, July 14th, 113 days until the 2008 presidential election. And today, one of the presidential candidates came out with a plan to send more U.S. troops into combat. It was not John McCain. The catch? Barack Obama wants to send these troops to Afghanistan, the war some U.S. troops call Forgotistan. In a New York Times op-ed today, Obama says as president he would send at least 2 additional combat brigades to Afghanistan. He explained for the umpteenth time that he has never set a rigid, unconditional timetable for withdrawal from Iraq. And he explained why he thinks leaving Iraq is essential to America's safety. Ending the war is essential to meeting our broader strategic goals, he wrote, starting in Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the Taliban is resurgent and al-Qaeda has a safe haven. Iraq is not the central front in the war on terrorism, and it never has been. Obama will travel with Republican Senator Chuck Hagel and Democratic vice presidential shortlister Senator Jack Reed to both Iraq and Afghanistan this summer. Under Obama's plan, which he reiterated is open to revision, U.S. combat brigades would be removed from Iraq over a course of 16 months, ending in the summer of 2010, leaving a residual force in Iraq to perform specific limited missions like protecting U.S. personnel, hunting al-Qaeda, and possibly training Iraqis. Obama's argument for focusing on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border was underscored this weekend by the deadliest attack on U.S. forces there in years. 9 Americans killed in a coordinated military assault on a U.S. base yesterday. All this amid reports of growing military concern about Afghanistan, the Pentagon having already retasked the USS Abraham Lincoln to the region, and military officials reportedly urging Mr. Bush to accelerate troop movements out of Iraq and into Afghanistan. And reports that even Bush administration diplomats have now been, quote, talking about dates for U.S. pullouts in talks with the Iraqis, a path the president previously claimed would help the terrorists. Let's bring in a man who knows about real terrorists, former counterterror advisor Richard Clarke, author of Your Government Failed You. Mr. Clarke, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Rachel, it's good to see you for a change.
First, you worked in the 2 most recent administrations on the issue of counterterrorism. With that expertise, can you weigh in on Senator Obama's piece today, whether you think he really gets the important issues on counterterrorism?
Well, what he said today is in no way different from what he's been saying for about a year now. For about a year now, he has been sounding the alarm about the real battle against al-Qaeda, which has always been Afghanistan and Pakistan. That's where they were before 2001. That's where they still are today. And you look at what he says today, it's the same thing. He said, I would send 2 more brigades, perhaps 3 into Afghanistan, and I would start pulling brigades out of Iraq at the rate of about 1 a month. And there's exactly the same statement as he made throughout the primary campaign is what he said today.
July is on track, sadly, to follow May and June as a month in which Afghanistan may be deadlier than Iraq for U.S. troops. Do you think that we are now finally getting to a point where we can dispense with the myth that this administration's focus on Iraq hasn't cost us in terms of our goals in Afghanistan?
Well, I think so. I mean, we have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullins, the highest-ranking officer in the U.S. military, saying he wishes that he had more brigades in Afghanistan today, and the reason he doesn't is that they're in Iraq. And that's exactly what Barack Obama has been saying for over a year. So if Barack Obama is a military amateur, as some people are saying, I guess the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is too.
This is going to sound like a simple question, and I don't mean it rhetorically at all. I mean it seriously. Do we know at all what the Bush strategy is in Afghanistan? Do we know what the Bush administration's goals are in Afghanistan and what they're doing to try to meet those goals? And do we know of any difference between McCain and Bush on those issues?
Well, McCain hasn't said much about what he would do in Afghanistan. And Obama has talked about a comprehensive plan involving not just military activity, but development aid, to cut back on the opium crops, to get the people there some alternative other than the Taliban. And when you look at the McCain statements, they're kind of vague. Frankly, the Bush statements are kind of vague, too, because the obvious conclusion is you have to send more troops. His military leaders, his Secretary of Defense even, has been saying that. But he hasn't been because he can't send more troops right now because of this war in Iraq.
The conservative commentator Bill Kristol, consider the source here, but he did recently report that President Bush feels the big problem heading into the next presidential administration is neither Iraq nor Afghanistan, but Pakistan, our supposed ally, where al-Qaeda has very real safe havens, where Admiral Mullen has spent a lot of time lately, as you mentioned, but where the government still does not want our troops, this weekend reiterating yet again that they do not admit that the presence of U.S. troops anywhere in Pakistan, nor do they want them. Where are the candidates on Pakistan? And are you hearing any sort of cogent policy out of Washington toward Pakistan at all?
Well, we're not hearing anything out of the Bush administration other than they're going to keep pressing them. But there's no policy to convince the Pakistani government to actually go after al-Qaeda, which has a free haven up in the Northwest Territories. Obama began almost a year ago saying that we had to do more. He said during the debates that if there were a high-value al-Qaeda target on the other side of the border in Pakistan, he would authorize force to go after them. And he was attacked for that. And then 4 times, Rachel, 4 times this year, quietly, the Bush administration did exactly what Obama had said should be done. So I find this kind of interesting phenomenon going on. Obama is saying things that turn out later to be obvious and true, and even the Bush administration has to admit it and start doing what Obama was onto months before they were. And yet McCain is the national security expert. McCain, remember, wanted to go into Iraq in 1998. He started advocating the invasion of Iraq in 1998, and he has no plan to get out. Obama, at least, is saying if everything goes as expected, U.S. troops, major combat units, will be out in the summer of 2010. That's pretty specific.
Richard Clark, former National Counterterrorism Advisor, the author of Your Government Failed You. It's a pleasure to see you and have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rachel.